Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the edge of the console as the alarm klaxons blared, red lights strobing across the cramped bridge of the UNS Vanguard.
All hands, brace for impact.
Shields at maximum! Her voice cut through the chaos like a laser, steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. The view screen showed it. The Kragthar dreadnought, a behemoth forged over centuries of alien engineering, looming like a jagged mountain in the void. Its hull, etched with glowing runes from generations of their empire's conquests, fired another salvo. Missiles streaked toward the Vanguard, each one a product of meticulous, unyielding design, built to shatter worlds, not skirmish with upstart humans. Shields holding at 62%, Captain, Ensign Raj Patel reported from Tactical, his fingers flying over the holographic controls. Fingers that had once tuned violins back on Earth, now rerouting power with the precision of a surgeon. But their targeting algorithms are adapting. If we don't vector off, the ship lurched as a near miss rocked them, inertial dampeners whining. Helena shot a glance at Lieutenant Mira Chen, her XO, who was already barking orders into the comms. Mira's calm, analytical mind was the ship's backbone, always 3 steps ahead even when the math didn't add up. Helm, evasive pattern Delta 7, Elena commanded. Raj, lock quantum disruptors on their primary weapon array. We hit that, we buy time. Aye, Captain. Raj's response was clipped, but Elena caught the flicker of doubt in his eyes. The Kragthar machine wasn't just a ship. It was their legacy. A war engine refined through eons of flawless victories. Humans. We'd been spacefaring for a blink. The Vanguard twisted through the debris field of a shattered moon. Debris pinging off the hull like hail. Elena's mind raced. Standard maneuvers wouldn't cut it. The aliens had built this monster to endure sieges, not improvise against grit. Incoming boarding pods! Mira shouted, her voice taut. Pods detached from the dreadnought, sleek and automated, burrowing toward the Vanguard like parasites. Elena's jaw set. Seal all external hatches. Arm the breach teams. We're not losing this fight before it starts. As the first pod latched on with a metallic screech, Elena felt the weight of it all. The generations of human stubbornness distilled into this moment. They weren't built for eternity like the Kragthar. But we broke things, and we fixed them faster. The breach team's boots echoed through the Vanguard's corridors as they sprinted toward the outer hull, pulse rifles humming to life in their grips. Elena led the way, her cautious streak buried under the fire of necessity. Always the one to double-check seals before launch, now barking orders like a storm. Jam those vents first. Mira, get engineering on the aux power. Reroute everything to the bulkheads. Mira nodded from her station, fingers flying over the console, her witty edge sharpened by adrenaline. Already on it, Cap. But these Kragthar pods aren't playing nice. They're drilling with plasma tips. If they punch through, we've got automated drones incoming. Not some grunting boarding party. A shudder ran through the ship as another pod clamped on, the screech of metal on metal vibrating up Elena's spine. She slammed her palm against the nearest intercom. Reyes, status on the forward bay? Reyes, the burly mechanic with a brave streak that bordered on reckless, grunted back over the comm. Pods latched like a tick, Elena. Cutting torch won't touch it. Their alloys shrugging off our heat like it's nothing. Elena cursed under her breath, the debris field outside blurring past viewports as the Vanguard weaved to shake off more pursuers. The Kragthar dreadnought loomed in the distance, a behemoth forged over centuries, its hull a testament to unyielding design. Layered armor that regenerated under fire, weapons arrays that predicted trajectories before they formed. Humans had only cracked spaceflight a generation ago, scavenging tech from derelict probes. But they'd learned to adapt on the fly. Plan B, Elena said, sliding to a halt at the airlock. She yanked open a maintenance panel, exposing a tangle of conduits. Reyes, vent the Atmo in that section. Flush them out before they burrow. Copy that, Reyes replied, his voice steady despite the chaos. A hiss built in the vents, then erupted as emergency protocols kicked in. Through the intercom they heard the pod's drill whine falter, muffled screams, or were those mechanical whirs? Cutting short as vacuum claimed whatever was inside. But victory tasted like ash. Alarms blared from Mira's console. Cap, we've got 3 more pods vectoring in. And the dreadnought's locking weapons. It's not just boarding. They're prepping to glass us. Elena's mind raced, piecing together scraps of intel from the first skirmish. The Kragthar built for endurance, not flexibility. Their war machine assumed enemies would break against its walls, not slip through the cracks. She glanced at the panel, an idea sparking. "Mira, what's our scrap yield from that moon bust?" "Enough to jury-rig a decoy swarm," Mira shot back, already pulling schematics. "But it'll drain the reactors. We won't outrun them after." "Do it." Elena sealed the panel and gripped her rifle tighter. Reyes burst through a side hatch, wiping grease from his brow, his eyes alight with that reckless grin. Pods scrapped now, but they adapted mid-drill, reinforced the tip like they learned from us. The ship bucked as the first energy beam grazed the shields, sparks dancing across the bridge. Elena steadied herself against the console, the weight of her crew's trust pressing in. They weren't eternal like the Kragthar, but they'd turn their own debris against them, one improvised hack at a time. In the engineering bay, Reyes hauled a crate of moon fragments toward the launcher bays, sweat beading on his forehead. "These rocks won't fool their sensors for long," he muttered to himself, but his hands moved with purpose, wiring proximity charges into the mix. Mira patched through from the bridge. "Make it count, Reyes. Elena's got the team's repositioning. We're turning this tin can into a porcupine." He chuckled, the sound low and defiant. "Porcupine it is. Just don't let the bastards hug us first." As the decoy swarm ejected in a glittering cloud mimicking the Vanguard signature, the dreadnought's fire shifted, massive lances of plasma carving through the false targets. For a heartbeat, the real ship slipped free, engines flaring toward a nearby asteroid cluster. But the reprieve shattered. One pod, overlooked in the frenzy, breached the aft hull with a deafening crack. Drones poured out, spindly limbs clicking as they scanned for vitals. Elena spun toward the sound, rifle up. "Breach confirmed. Teams converge on Sector 7 now." Reyes dropped his tools and ran, the corridor lights flickering under strain. The drones were fast, their sensors piercing the gloom, but humans were faster in the dark. He rounded a corner and fired, the pulse round shearing a leg from the lead unit. It crumpled, sparking, but two more skittered forward. "Flank 'em!" Mira's voice crackled over his comm, her own station abandoned as she joined the fray, a makeshift stun baton in hand. She darted low, jamming it into a drone's joint. Sparks flew and it seized. Elena arrived last, cautious eyes scanning for more. She squeezed off precise shots, dropping the final one. Hull integrity at 60%. We patch that or we limp home in pieces. The three of them stood amid the wreckage, breaths ragged. The dreadnought was closing again, its pods redeploying like a hive roused. Reyes wiped drone oil from his hands. They built it to last forever. But forever's got weak spots when you poke 'em right. Elena nodded, the cost sinking in. A fractured moon behind them, a ship on the edge. But the asteroid field loomed ahead, dense and unforgiving. A graveyard the Kragthar machine might not navigate as flawlessly. The asteroid field's edge clawed at the hull like jagged teeth, the first boulder shearing off a sensor array with a metallic screech that echoed through the corridors. Reyes gripped the command console, his knuckles white against the flickering readouts. "Full burn, Elena. Thread us through the outer ring." "Jax, reroute power to the shields." "We can't take another graze like that." Elena nodded, her fingers dancing over the piloting yoke, eyes narrowed on the holographic display where rocks tumbled in lazy, lethal orbits. The ship lurched, engines whining as it slipped between two house-sized fragments, the void outside a blur of gray and shadow. "Holding steady, but this field's thicker than Intel said. Kragthar must have mined it for ambushes." Jack slammed a panel shut in the engineering bay, sweat beading on his brow as he patched the power grid. "Shields at 80%, barely. That dreadnought's got us tagged. I can feel its scans prickling like static." He patched through to the bridge, his voice crackling over the intercom. "If we don't shake 'em soon, those pods will turn this into a shooting gallery." The first real hit came without warning, a rogue chunk, fist-sized but dense as neutronium, punched through the ventral plating. Alarms blared, red lights painting the bridge in bloody hues. Elena yanked the ship into a barrel roll, debris rattling in the vents, but the damage readout spiked. Life support flickering in the aft sections. "Lost pressure in cargo hold 3, Jack shouted, already scrambling from his station, toolkit clanging against his thigh. "Sealing it off, buy me 2 minutes." Reyes unstrapped, grabbing a breather mask from the overhead. "Make it 1. Elena, keep us dancing. Don't let that beast line up a shot." He bolted for the access hatch, the ship's groans underscoring his boots on the deck. The Kragthar dreadnought loomed on the rear sensors, a colossal shadow ejecting fresh drone swarms into the field, their thrusters igniting like angry fireflies. In the dim engineering crawl space, Jax wedged himself against a ruptured conduit, sparks showering his gloves. The breach hissed, atmosphere venting into the cold, carrying away loose tools and the faint scent of scorched circuits. He yanked a jury-rigged clamp from his belt. Nothing fancy, just plasteel scavenged from a repair drone they'd gutted earlier, and forced it over the tear. "Come on, you bastard," he muttered, twisting until his arms burned. The seal held, pressure stabilizing with a reluctant pop, but the drones were closing, their scans piercing the asteroids like sonar pings. One zipped past the viewport, its laser turret swiveling toward the engines. Elena fired the point defense guns, a staccato burst that vaporized its wing, sending it spiraling into a rock. "Got one, 2 more inbound. Reyes, we need a vector out." "This field's a trap." Reyes burst back onto the bridge, mask dangling from his neck. "Jackin' status?" "Sealed, but we're bleeding coolant. Engines'll overheat in 10 if we push." Jax's face appeared on the split screen, streaked with grime, a wry grin cracking through the tension. "Unless you want me to improvise a radiator from the coffee maker." "Later," Reyes snapped, dropping into his seat. He studied the scan, the field's chaotic dance revealing a narrow chute. Too tight for the dreadnought, maybe. "Elena, take us into that gap at Mark 27. Full evasive. Make it look random." She complied, the ship bucking as it dove, asteroids whipping by so close Reyes could see the craters etched like war scars. A drone latched onto the hull with magnetic clamps, its drill whining to life against the armor. The deck shuddered, vibrations climbing into a teeth-rattling roar. "Border!" Elena yelled, twisting in her harness to grab a sidearm from the rack. "It's chewing through—" Reyes was already moving, snatching a plasma cutter from the emergency kit. "Cover me." He hit the floor hatch release, dropping into the underdeck where the drone's legs spidered across the plating. The air hummed with its mechanical pulse, red optics locking on him. He lunged, cutter flaring blue, slicing into a joint with a shower of molten slag. The drone bucked, servos screaming, but he held, twisting until it went limp, tumbling free into the void. Back on the bridge, the chute narrowed, forcing Elena to feather the thrusters in microbursts. The dreadnought tried to follow, its massive form crumpling the outer rocks, but it stalled, debris avalanching over its prow. For a heartbeat, silence reigned, only the hum of strained systems and their ragged breaths. Then Jax's voice cut in sharp. "Coolant's holding for now, but they've adapted. Fresh signatures deploying. That field's waking up." Reyes leaned forward, the holographic map pulsing with new threats. They weren't out yet. Reyes's fingers danced over the console, zooming the holomap until the asteroid field's new signatures sharpened into predatory shapes. Sleek interceptors, uncoiling from the dreadnought's underbelly like vipers from a nest. Each one pulsed with that alien red glow, their hulls fracturing the starlight into jagged warnings. "Elena, plot us a vector through the inner belt," he said, voice steady despite the knot in his gut. "The dense cluster at bearing 247, it's our best choke point." She didn't look up, her hands a blur on the controls. The shuttle shuddered as she banked hard, thrusters firing in defiant bursts. "Copy that, but these things are fast. They'll cut us off in 30 seconds if we don't shake the pursuit." Jax patched in from engineering, his breath ragged over the comm. "Rerouting auxiliary power to shields. We've got maybe 10 minutes before the coolant breach hits critical. Make it count." The viewport filled with tumbling rocks, the field a graveyard of shattered worlds. Reyes gripped the armrest, eyes flicking between the map and the readouts. The dreadnought lagged behind, its colossal frame too bulky to weave through the debris, but those interceptors were closing, 3 of them fanning out to flank. One darted ahead, its weapons ports irising open with a mechanical whine that echoed through the sensors. A plasma lance streaked past, vaporizing a nearby boulder into a cloud of superheated dust. The shockwave rocked the shuttle, alarms blaring as inertial dampeners strained. "Evade!" Reyes barked, but Elena was already on it, rolling the ship into a corkscrew that clipped a fragment of ice, sending vibrations rattling through the hull. "They're learning our patterns," she muttered, sweat beading on her forehead. "That last shot was too close," adjusted mid-flight. Jax's voice crackled again. "I've got an idea. The aliens built these for straight-line assaults, right? No finesse in tight quarters. If we vent the cargo bay, dump the spare plating, We can create a debris screen. Buy us time to slip through. Reyes nodded, the plan clicking into place. Human trick born of scrap and desperation. Do it. Elena, line us up for the vent on my mark. The interceptors swarmed closer, their formations tightening like a noose. The lead one fired again. The beam grazing the shuttle's wing, melting a seam in a hiss of escaping atmosphere. Alarms wailed, hull integrity at 80%. Mark! Reyes shouted. Jax triggered the release. The cargo bay doors blew open, spewing a torrent of metal sheets and tool crates into the void. They tumbled outward, a makeshift storm of shrapnel that collided with the nearest interceptor. Sparks erupted as the alien craft veered, its shields flickering under the barrage, one panel crumpling like foil. Elena seized the opening, punching the thrusters to thread the needle between two massive asteroids. The shuttle groaned, scraping against a protruding spine of rock that tore away a sensor array in a shower of sparks. But they were through the outer layer now, deeper into the field's heart where the rocks clustered like forgotten bones. The interceptors hesitated. Two of them snagged in the debris wake, engines stuttering as they fought to realign. Reyes exhaled, watching the map update. 2 down, but the third was still on them, relentless. Keep pushing. That big one's our ticket out. Looks like a hollowed-out moonlet. If we can use it for cover. The third interceptor lunged, its lance charging with a building hum that vibrated the deck plates. Elena jinked left, but it anticipated, the shot slamming into the shuttle's rear stabilizer. The ship spun wildly, controls fighting her as momentum took over. Jax, stabilizers are fried, we're drifting. I'm on it, rerouting hydraulics from the landing gear, hold on. Reyes unstrapped, bracing against the bulkhead as the world tilted. The moonlet loomed in the viewport, a cratered behemoth scarred by eons of impacts. If they hit wrong, it was over. Elena wrestled the yoke, muscles corded. I can feather it, aim for the shadow side. The interceptor closed for the kill, red optics blazing. But Jax's fix kicked in just as the shuttle clipped the moonlet's edge, the improvised thrust spinning them into a crevasse that swallowed them whole. The alien craft overshot, slamming into the surface in a bloom of fire and debris. Darkness enveloped them, the shuttle wedged in the narrow fissure, engines whining down to silence. Reyes's heart pounded, the air thick with the scent of ozone. Coolant stable, Jax reported, voice triumphant but edged. But we're blind in here, and that dreadnought's still out there calling for reinforcements. Elena slumped back, wiping her brow. We bought time. What's next? Reyes stared into the gloom, the holomap's faint glow illuminating his determined grin. We improvise, like always. Reyes leaned forward, the holomap flickering like a dying firefly in the dim cabin. The crevasse walls pressed in, jagged rock scraping faint lines against the shuttle's hull with every subtle shift. He traced a finger along the projected terrain, zooming in on the fractured labyrinth ahead. See this vein here? He said, voice low but steady. It runs parallel to the dreadnought's patrol vector. If we punch through, we might flank their sensor array from below. Jax wiped grease from his hands on his jumpsuit, peering over Reyes's shoulder. Punch through? With what? Our drill's rated for asteroid ice, not this basalt bullshit. One wrong torque, and we're pulverized. Elena checked the power readouts, her fingers dancing across the console, cautious as ever, but her eyes held that spark, the one that said she was already calculating angles. He's right about the vein. Scans show it's thinner upstream, maybe 100 meters, but the engines are hot. We can't idle forever without drawing heat signatures. The shuttle groaned, a low vibration humming through the seats as residual thrust settled. Outside, the alien ship's debris field glowed faintly on the external cams, twisted metal cooling in the vacuum. Reyes felt the weight of it all, their squad reduced to 3, the colony's last hope pinned in this godforsaken crack. Options? Reyes prompted, glancing between them. No time for hierarchy. Survival demanded votes. Jax crossed his arms, his wiry frame tense. Rig the auxiliary thrusters for a microburst. Short-range excavator mode. It'll burn fuel like hell, but we get momentum. Elena shook her head. Fuel's at 30%. If it backfires, we're dead weight. What if we deploy the mag clamps? Pull ourselves along the walls, slow and stealthy. Buy time to recharge. Reyes nodded, weighing it. Jax's plan was bold, Elena's safe. But safe meant stagnation, and stagnation meant the dreadnought's reinforcements arriving. He remembered the briefings back on the colony, the aliens' war machine, a generational behemoth forged in their hive worlds, designed to crush human footholds without mercy. They'd built it for eternity. Humans had to end it now. Jax's burst, but modified, Reyes decided. We couple it with Elena's clamps. Initial pull to a line, then the excavator kick. If it jams, we abort and seal the breach. Jax grinned, already rummaging in the toolkit. Knew you'd go bold. Hand me the plasma coils. As they worked, the cabin filled with the sharp tang of soldering. Elena monitored comms, static hissing from the dreadnought's distant transmissions, alien chatter, guttural and mechanical, probing for their signal. A chill ran down Reyes's spine. One ping from them, and the crevasse became a tomb. Coils. Synced, Jax announced 20 minutes later, sweat beading on his brow. Clamps primed. On your mark. Reyes strapped in, gripping the controls. Elena, eyes on structural integrity. Jax, thruster override ready. 3, 2. The mag clamps engaged with a metallic thud, yanking the shuttle forward inch by inch along the crevasse wall. Rock dust billowed in the cams, obscuring the view. Then Jax fired the microburst, a controlled roar that shattered the vane's edge. The shuttle lurched, hull screaming as it bored into the fissure. Alarms blared. Pressure spike. Hull breach minor. They were through, tumbling into a wider cavern, momentum carrying them past glowing mineral veins that lit the space like submerged lightning. But the burst had been too hot. A secondary fracture spiderwebbed across the rear paneling, and Elena's console lit up red. Fuel line ruptured. We're venting. 10% loss already. Reyes wrestled the stabilizers, the shuttle scraping to a halt against a ledge. In the distance, through the new opening, the dreadnought's silhouette loomed against the stars, its red optics sweeping closer. They're locking on, Elena whispered. Jax cursed, patching the line with emergency sealant. Not yet, they aren't. Reyes, get us under that overhang, shadow cover. Reyes punched the maneuvering jets, sliding them into the cavern's lip just as the alien scan swept overhead, bathing the rock in crimson light. The beam passed, oblivious. They held their breath in the sudden quiet. The shuttle's hum the only sound. Reyes exhaled, staring at the dreadnought's underbelly now visible, its armored belly bristling with torpedo bays, a monument to alien patience. One generation of their making, and here they were, humans already finding the cracks. Jax gripped the shuttle's console, his knuckles whitening as the dreadnought's shadow lingered overhead like a predator's wing. The alien ship's underbelly hummed with latent power, torpedo bays yawning open in silent threat. Reyes kept the engines throttled to a whisper, the craft wedged into the cavern's jagged lip, dust sifting down from the vibration. Elena, readings on their patrol patterns, Jax said, voice low and clipped. He wiped sweat from his brow. The air recyclers struggling against the heat of their recent burn. She hunched over her scanner, fingers dancing across the holographic display. Tight grid search, but erratic. They're compensating for the asteroid's interference. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they loop back. Reyes nodded, eyes fixed on the viewport. Plenty of time to slip out the far vent. If we time it right, we can ghost toward their auxiliary dock. Reyes out. The plan had formed in the adrenaline haze after their narrow escape. Infiltrate the dreadnought's understructure, not through the main bays guarded like fortresses, but via the forgotten maintenance vents. The aliens built for eternity, layering redundancies upon redundancies. But humans excelled at spotting the oversight, the one seam left for repairs no longer needed in their perfect machine. Jax patched a quick schematic onto the shared display, a patchwork of stolen alien blueprints and human guesses. Here, vent cluster at grid 47B, it's shielded, but if we cut the power relays inside, we could black out their sensor net for a sector. Elena frowned, tracing a line. Risky. One wrong slice and we trip the failsafe. Whole ship goes into lockdown. Better than sitting here as target practice, Reyes muttered, easing the shuttle forward an inch. The rock groaned in protest. They moved as one, the shuttle detaching from the overhang with a soft hiss of thrusters. Stars wheeled into view, the dreadnought's massive form dominating the void, its red optics pulsing like watchful eyes. Reyes vectored them low, skimming the asteroid's craggy surface, weaving through debris fields that clattered against the hull. Closing on the vent, Elena announced, her voice steady despite the tension coiling in her shoulders. EM signature minimal, they're not expecting company. Jax prepped the breaching kit, a jury-rigged plasma cutter fused with human EMP coils. Alien armor laughed at brute force, but layered with electromagnetic disruption? That was their edge. The shuttle shuddered as they aligned with the vent, mouth a yawning maw in the dreadnought's flank barely wide enough for their frame. Reyes fired the docking clamps, magnetic locks biting into the hull with a metallic thunk. Alarms stayed silent. For now. Inside the airlock, they suited up in silence, the suit's seals hissing shut. Jax checked his cutter, Elena her scanner, Reyes the breaching charges, compact devices to seal their exit if things soured. Remember, Jax said, helmet visor fogging briefly from his breath. We're not here to fight. We're ghosts. In, plant the disruptor out. Elena met his gaze through the glass. And if the patterns shift? Then we improvise. Human specialty. Reyes cracked a grim smile. Let's make their generations of work feel like a bad investment. The inner door cycled, revealing the vent's dim corridor. Conduits snaking along walls plated in iridescent alloy, lit by faint bioluminescent strips. The air was sterile, carrying a faint ozone tang from the ship's core reactors. They advanced in a tight line, boots magnetized to the deck, scanner pings echoing softly. 50 meters in, the corridor branched. Elena's device beeped, a patrol drone humming from the left fork. They flattened against the wall, hearts pounding as the orb-shaped machine floated past, its sensors whirring inches from Jax's arm. It continued without pause, oblivious. Close, Reyes whispered over comms. Too close, Elena replied. Patterns are tightening. We need to move. They pushed on, reaching the relay chamber, a spherical node where power lines converged like veins in a colossal heart. Jax knelt, cutter humming to life, its blue arc dancing against the first conduit. One slice. Sparks flew, but the line held, alien shielding adaptive, sealing micro breaches on contact. Damn, he growled. It's healing faster than we thought. Elena scanned frantically. Override protocol, reroute through the secondary, but it'll draw power from the main grid, short window. Reyes planted the charges at the access points. Do it. I'll cover the breach. Jax nodded, fingers flying to interface his suit's hack module with the panel. Code scrolled in alien script, his software probing for weaknesses. A match, human algorithms twisting their rigid logic into knots. The disruptor engaged with a whine, electromagnetic pulses rippling outward. Lights flickered in the chamber, the ship's distant hum stuttering. But then, a klaxon blared, low and ominous. The walls vibrated as bulkheads began to iris shut. Lockdown, Elena said, voice tight. We triggered it. Jax yanked the device free, but the far exit clamped sealed, trapping them. Reyes fired at the closing door, plasma bolts scorching but not penetrating. Back the way we came, Jax barked, grabbing Elena's arm. They sprinted, drones swarming now from side vents, their beams lancing out. Reyes spun, shoulder-checking one aside, its chassis crumpling against the wall. A bolt grazed Jax's suit, alarms wailing in his helmet. Pressure dropping, hull breach imminent. They burst into the main vent just as the shuttle's airlock beacon pulsed ahead. But the docking clamps held firm, overridden by the ship's defenses. They're pulling us in. Jax slammed his palm against the shuttle's access panel, fingers flying over the override sequence. The docking clamps groaned in response, but the alien ship's tractor beam tugged harder, dragging them deeper into the hangar bay like a fish on a line. Sparks flew from the panel as the interface glitched, human code clashing with the ancient alien protocols. Jax, it's not budging, Elena shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. She braced against the bulkhead, rerouting power from the shuttle's auxiliary thrusters to the coupling locks. Drones buzzed closer, their sensor eyes glowing red in the dim light, beams slicing the air inches from Reyes's boots. Reyes pivoted, his rifle barking precise bursts that shattered 2 drones mid-swarm. Shrapnel pinged off his armored suit, but he didn't flinch. "We cut loose or we get dissected. Your call, boss." The shuttle lurched, the beam's pull intensifying. Jax's mind raced. Standard disengage wouldn't work. The aliens had layered their defenses with adaptive locks, designed to hold generation-spanning fleets. But humans didn't build for eternity. They improvised for the now. He yanked a conduit from the wall, exposing raw wiring, and jury-rigged a feedback loop using the shuttle's EMP emitter. "Elena, sync the emitter to the clamps. Overload it. Make the ship think it's got a power surge from its own systems." She nodded, sweat beading on her brow under the helmet's glare. Her fingers danced across her wrist console, linking the feeds. The air hummed with building static, the drones hesitating as if sensing the anomaly. One fired wildly, scorching Reyes's shoulder plate and sending him staggering back. "Got it! Firing!" Elena hit the command. A pulse ripped through the docking arm, blue arcs dancing along the metal. The clamps spasmed, releasing with a metallic screech that echoed through the bay. The shuttle shot forward on residual thrust, but the tractor beam snapped taut again, yanking them sideways into a cluster of maintenance pods. Jax gripped the harness as they spun. "Reyes, man the guns. Target the emitter arrays on the walls." Reyes hauled himself to the turret, his breath ragged but steady. He sighted the glowing nodes, alien tech pulsing with ethereal energy, and unleashed a volley. Explosions bloomed, weakening the beam's hold. The shuttle bucked free for a heartbeat, then slammed into a support strut, alarms blaring from every console. Elena wrestled the controls, stabilizing their spin. "Hull integrity at 60%. We're venting atmosphere. Seal it." Jax patched the breach with an emergency foam dispenser, the white spray hissing into the vacuum. Outside, the hangar swarmed with more drones, their forms multiplying like shadows in the flickering lights. The alien machine was waking fully now, its corridors alive with defensive protocols honed over centuries. "We can't outrun this forever," Reyes growled, reloading as another wave closed in. His eyes flicked to Jax. "What's the play? Straight for the core?" Jax stared at the schematics flickering on his display, the war machine's heart a labyrinth of energy webs deep within. Generations of alien engineering, unbreakable by design. But humans had cracked worse with less. "No, we hit the auxiliary nodes first, cascade failure. It'll buy us time to plant the disruptor." The shuttle stabilized, engines roaring as Elena punched them toward the inner vents. Drones pursued, their beams carving molten trails along the fuselage. One clipped the tail, sending them into a wild fishtail, but Reyes's fire kept them at bay, his shots economical, each one a testament to drilled precision. Elena glanced back, her cautious nature surfacing in the tight line of her jaw. "This could fry our systems too. You sure?" Jax met her gaze, his wit flashing through the tension. "Sure as a bad bet pays off. Trust the hack." She banked hard, threading the needle between closing bulkheads. The first node loomed ahead, a crystalline pylon humming with power. Jax prepped the disruptor charge, a compact device born of scavenged parts and sheer desperation. It wasn't elegant, but it was human, raw, adaptive, unrelenting. Reyes covered their approach, his barrage thinning the drone horde. Incoming reinforcements, looks like the big ones. Larger sentinels detached from the walls, hulking forms with plasma lances charging. The shuttle shuddered under their fire, shields flaring. Elena dodged, her maneuvers sharp and intuitive, turning the alien corridors into a deadly gauntlet. "Almost there," Jax muttered, arming the charge. He launched it through the airlock tube, watching it latch onto the node with magnetic claws. A countdown ticked in his HUD, 30 seconds. The sentinels closed, one ramming the shuttle's side. Metal screamed and Reyes roared as he poured fire into its core, cracking the armor. Explosions rippled outward, but not before a lance pierced the wing, igniting fuel lines. "Evac now!" Jax yelled, hitting the manual release. They tumbled into the corridor, the shuttle's wreck blocking the Sentinel's path. The node detonated behind them, a shockwave of fracturing crystal that lit the vents in blinding white. Power flickered across the ship, bulkheads stuttering open and shut. Elena coughed through the dust, her suit's lights cutting the gloom. 1 down, 11 to go. Jax helped Reyes to his feet, the big man's arm hanging limp. "Make it count. We're just getting started." The alarms wailed on, the war machine's fury mounting, but for the first time its rhythm faltered, a human wrinkle in alien perfection. Jax gripped the railing as the corridor buckled beneath their boots, the ship's spine groaning like a beast in its death throes. Reyes leaned heavy on his good shoulder, blood seeping through the makeshift tourniquet on his arm, while Elena scanned the junction ahead with her wrist device, its holographic display flickering in the stuttering emergency lights. "Next node's 2 decks down, engineering sublevel," she said, voice steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. "But the paths are rerouting. Sentinels are converging on our heat signatures." Jax nodded, eyes narrowing at the bulkhead schematics projected in his visor. The alien war machine, a colossal relic of crystalline tech and fusion hearts, had been humming along for eons, its nodes pulsing like neurons in a god's brain. One sabotaged, and now the whole beast twitched, corridors sealing and unsealing in erratic spasms. They couldn't afford another firefight. Reyes was down an arm's worth of fight, and their breaching charges were down to half. "Stairwell's compromised," Jax muttered, kicking open a vent grate with his boot. The metal screeched, revealing a narrow duct laced with glowing conduits. "We go low. Elena, rig a decoy. Make it think we're punching through the outer hull." She knelt, pulling wires from her pack, her fingers dancing over the alien lattice. Cautious by nature, she always double-checked her hacks, but time pressed like a vice. "Decoy away in 10. It'll draw them starboard, but if it fails, we're boxed." Reyes grunted, shoving himself upright. "Just get me close enough to punch the damn thing. I've got one good arm left." The vent swallowed them whole, a claustrophobic crawl through humming veins of power. Jax led, his rifle slung tight to avoid snagging, the air thick with ozone and the faint tang of overheating circuits. Behind, Elena whispered status updates. Sentinels peeling off, lured by the false explosion she'd triggered in a distant cargo bay. But the ship fought back. Vibrations rattled their suits, and suddenly the duct ahead warped, crystalline shards erupting like teeth. "Barrier!" Jax barked, slamming his palm against it. The crystal pulsed, unyielding, a defensive bloom from the node's influence. Elena squeezed past, her tool in hand, its adaptive scanning for threats. "Hold still." She jacked in, overriding the growth sequence with a jury-rigged pulse from her device. Sparks flew, the barrier retracting in fits, but not before a sliver grazed Jax's glove, drawing blood. They spilled into the sublevel, a vast chamber of throbbing engines and suspended platforms. The 8th node loomed at the center, a fist-sized orb of iridescent alloy, webbed in energy filaments that cast shifting shadows. Guards, sleek, spider-like drones, patrolled its perimeter, their sensors sweeping in precise arcs. Reyes chambered around one-handed, his face pale but set. "Flank left. I'll draw fire." "No heroics," Jax snapped. But Reyes was already moving, lobbing a flare grenade that burst in blinding white. The drones whirled, lasers lancing out, scorching the deck where he rolled. Elena darted right, planting charges on a support strut. "Overload the coolant lines, it'll starve the node." Jax covered them, firing controlled bursts that shattered one drone's legs, sending it skittering. But the others adapted, shields flaring as they closed in. A bolt clipped Reyes's leg, dropping him with a curse. Jax lunged, hauling him back as the platform trembled. "Charges set," Elena yelled. "Evac in 3. The explosion ripped through the chamber, coolant spewing in frozen geysers that cracked the drone's chassis. The node flickered, its glow dimming as filaments snapped, but the backlash hit hard, a pressure wave that hurled Jax against a console, stars bursting in his vision. Alarms blared anew, deeper sections of the ship venting atmosphere. Elena helped Reyes up, her face smudged with soot. "Node's offline." 8 down. Jax pushed to his feet, tasting copper. The war machine shuddered, but its core beat on, defiant. They were carving it apart, piece by human piece, but each victory carved from them too. 4 more nodes, and the heart waiting. Jax wiped the blood from his lip. the metallic tang mixing with the acrid smoke still curling from the breached chamber. The war machine's corridors hummed with a wounded rhythm now, lights flickering like a beast trying to shake off the wound. Elena slung Rhea's arm over her shoulder, his leg dragging as they pushed toward the next access point. 3 nodes left after this one, each deeper, each more fortified. Jax checked his pack. 2 breaching charges, a makeshift EMP grenade from scavenged alien tech, and the multi-tool that had already saved their hides twice. "Double time it," Jax said, voice low but steady. That blast echoed. "Expect company." Reyes grunted, pain etching lines into his face, but he nodded. The man was cautious to a fault, always the one double-checking schematics before a move. Yet here he was, biting back complaints to keep pace. Elena, ever the wit, flashed a grim smile. "Company? These drones are like bad dates, persistent, but we keep ghosting them." They rounded a bulkhead into a narrower vein of the ship, conduits pulsing with bioluminescent fluid along the walls. The air grew thicker, laced with an ozone bite that made Jax's eyes water. Sensors on his wrist unit beeped erratically. The machine was adapting, rerouting power to seal them out. He pried open a panel, fingers dancing over alien glyphs he'd memorized from the first raid. A hiss and the inner door slid aside, revealing a chamber laced with crystalline lattices, the 9th node, thrumming like a heart valve under strain. "Lock it down," Elena ordered, easing Reyes against a strut. She unpacked the scanner, its beam cutting through the haze to map the node's defenses, overlapping force fields and a swarm of micro-drones hovering like angry hornets. Jax knelt by the primary filament, the core's energy arcing faintly. "We overload this one quiet. No fireworks." His plan was simple. Splice a feedback loop using the EMP components, fry the node without alerting the whole vessel. Reyes, from his perch, murmured adjustments, his cautious eye spotting a relay Jax had missed. As Elena synced the device, the first micro-drone stirred. A low whine built and they detached, swarming toward the intruders with needle-like proboscises extended. Jax slapped the splice in place, sparks flying as circuits kissed. "Go now." Elena fired her pulse rifle, beams lancing out to scatter the swarm. 2 drones latched onto her arm, their stings drawing blood before she crushed them under her boot. Reyes, fighting through the pain, lobbed a frag from his belt, crude human explosive against alien precision. It detonated in a flash, shredding half the swarm but sending shards ricocheting. One grazed Jax's shoulder, tearing fabric and flesh alike. The node whined, its lattices cracking under the feedback surge. Energy bled out in stuttering pulses, the chamber's glow dimming to a sullen red. But the machine fought back. A secondary shield snapped up, slamming into Jax and pinning him against the wall, pressure built in his chest, ribs creaking. "Elena," he gasped. She pivoted, slamming the multi-tool's edge into a control node on the shield generator. It sparked and died with a pop, the field collapsing. Jax slumped free, sucking air. Reyes dragged himself forward, slapping a manual override on the filament. With a final groan, the node went dark, its power threads snapping like brittle bones. Alarms wailed deeper in the ship, a chorus of fury. The floor vibrated, reinforcements inbound. Elena hauled Reyes up again, her arm bleeding, but her grip iron. 2 nodes to go. "We're bleeding it dry." Jax nodded, ignoring the fire in his shoulder. They sealed the chamber behind them and plunged into the shadows, the war machine's pulse weakening but its rage sharpening. Each step cost them, but they pressed on, humans against the impossible, carving victory from desperation. The corridor narrowed further, forcing them single file. Jax took point, rifle ready. A distant rumble echoed, bulkheads shifting, the ship reshaping to trap them. Elena's scanner pinged. The 10th node lay ahead, guarded by something new, something alive. Not drones, but the machine's organic sentinels, grown from its own flesh. "Adapt or die," Jax muttered, readying the last EMP. They had no more room for plans to fail. Jax led the way, his boots scraping against the slick, pulsating floor that seemed to breathe with the ship's malice. The corridor twisted like a vein, walls contracting in slow, deliberate pulses that narrowed the path to mere inches. Elena followed close, her scanner's glow casting erratic shadows on the fleshy barriers ahead. "Contact in 10 meters, she whispered, voice steady despite the blood soaking her sleeve. 2 sentinels, organic, fast movers." Jax gripped his rifle tighter, the EMP charge humming in his offhand. No time for subtlety. He kicked off a panel, revealing a bundle of glowing conduits snaking through the wall. "Override here. You handle the big one. I'll draw fire." She nodded, pulling a vibro knife from her belt, its edge already humming to life. They burst into the chamber, a cavernous heart of the machine where bioluminescent sacs throbbed like lanterns in a storm. The sentinels uncoiled from the ceiling. Nightmare. Hybrids of sinew and metal, tentacles whipping through the air with serrated barbs. One lunged at Jax, its mass slamming him against a bulkhead. Pain exploded in his ribs, but he twisted, firing the EMP point blank. Blue arcs danced across its hide, seizing its limbs in electric spasms. Elena darted low, slicing at the second sentinel's underbelly as it reared toward her. Green ichor sprayed, sizzling on the floor, but the thing adapted, its wounds sealing with fibrous growths. "It's learning," she grunted, dodging a tentacle that cracked the deck where her head had been. Jax rolled free, the first sentinel convulsing but not down. He yanked a thermal grenade from his vest, last one, and lobbed it underhand. The blast lit the chamber in white fire, charring the beast's core. It slumped, twitching, but the ship groaned in response, the floor buckling as if in agony. "Nodes exposed," Elena called, pointing to a crystalline core pulsing at the chamber's center, veins of energy threading into it like roots. She slashed the last sentinel's anchoring tendril, sending it crashing into a wall where it thrashed, buying them seconds. Together they converged, Jax planting the EMP while Elena jury-rigged a bypass with salvaged wiring from her pack. Sparks flew as she connected circuits, her hands blurring. "This'll overload it, but it'll pull power from the adjacent nodes. We hit the 11th fast or the whole system stabilizes." The ship shuddered violently, a deep rumble building from below. Alarms wailed in alien tones, and the walls began to extrude spines, closing in. Jax sealed the device, watching the core flicker. "Detonate on my mark. 3, 2. The explosion ripped through the node, a shockwave of shattered crystal and venting plasma that hurled them back. Elena hit the ground hard, her knife skittering away, but Jax hauled her up, slinging her arm over his shoulder. One node left in this sector. But the Sentinel's death throes had alerted something worse. The machine's core defenses stirring, corridors ahead reshaping into a labyrinth of traps. They limped forward, the air thick with ozone and the scent of burnt flesh. Victory edged closer, but the cost mounted with every breath. Jax gripped Elena's waist tighter, his boots scraping against the pulsating floor as they rounded the next bend. The corridor ahead twisted like a living vein, walls undulating with faint bioluminescent pulses that revealed jagged protrusions waiting to impale anything foolish enough to charge blindly. "Stay low," he whispered, his voice a gravelly rasp from the smoke still clinging to his lungs. That last blast woke the whole damn hive. Elena nodded, her face smeared with grime and a fresh cut above her eye weeping blood. She clutched the EI makeshift scanner in her free hand, its jury-rigged Human Alliance tech, a salvaged datapad fused with scavenged alien crystals, flickering erratically. "Signal stronger here. Core's just beyond this junction, but the traps, they're adapting. Saw our pattern from the node breach." They paused at the edge of the chamber, a vast spherical hollow where conduits snaked across the ceiling like exposed nerves. In the center, a pedestal hummed, cradling the final Nexus crystal, a throbbing heart of the war machine, veins of energy radiating outward to feed the alien behemoth's endless conquest engines light years away. But guarding it was no simple drone. A colossal sentinel uncoiled from the shadows, its segmented body armored in iridescent chitin, multiple limbs ending in plasma whips that crackled with restrained fury. It had been dormant, built over generations by the Xeno architects to crush any intrusion, but now its sensors locked on them with a predatory whine. "Plan B it is," Jax muttered, dropping Elena behind a fallen strut. He yanked a thermal charge. From his belt, the last one. Its timer already primed from the previous fight. "I'll draw it left. You flank and plant the override. No heroics, just get the crystal singing our tune." She shot him a fierce look, her cautious nature warring with the fire in her eyes. "And if it anticipates, We've got nothing left for backup. Then we improvise like always. He flashed a grim smile, then bolted out, charge in hand. The sentinel reacted instantly, one whip lashing out to carve a molten scar across the floor where his foot had been a heartbeat before. Jax rolled, came up firing his pulse rifle, stolen xenotech modified with human capacitors for extra kick. Bolts hammered the beast's underbelly, sparking but not penetrating, buying him seconds as it pivoted with unnatural speed. Elena darted right, hugging the wall, her breaths shallow and controlled. The air hummed with the sentinel's rage. Vibrations, shaking loose crystal shards that rained like deadly hail. She reached the pedestal's base, fingers flying over the scanner to interface. The alien code was a nightmare, layers of generational algorithms designed to repel brute force. But she'd cracked similar nodes before, spotting the human edge. Patterns too rigid, no room for chaos. "Come on, you beautiful brute," she urged under her breath, splicing in a feedback loop from their earlier detonation data. It was a gamble, turning the machine's own defensive reflexes against it. The sentinel lunged at Jax, its mass slamming into him like a freight train. He twisted midair, slamming the charge onto its dorsal plate before hitting the ground hard, ribs cracking audibly. Pain exploded in his side, but he scrambled back, rifle chattering to keep the whips at bay. "Elena, now!" Her override clicked into place just as the charge detonated. The blast ripped through the sentinel's core, chitin shattering in a spray of acrid fluid. But the beast didn't fall clean. It thrashed in its death spiral, one limb sweeping wide and catching Elena's leg as she dove away. She screamed, tumbling. Across the floor, the scanner skittering from her grasp. Jax crawled to her, ignoring the fire in his chest, hauling her up as the chamber quaked. The Nexus crystal pulsed erratically, the override taking hold, faint human code weaving into its matrix, beginning the long unraveling of the war machine's empire. But the cost etched deeper. Elena's leg twisted at a wrong angle, and beyond the chamber, distant rumbles signaled reinforcements stirring from deeper holds. They locked eyes, defiance burning brighter than the pain. One more push, and the stars would remember human grit. Jax gripped Elena's arm tighter, his breath ragged against the chamber's hum. The Nexus crystal flickered like a dying star, threads of their hacked code burrowing deeper into its alien lattice. But the rumbles grew louder, boots on metal, chitin claws scraping corridors. Reinforcements closing in. "We can't hold here," Elena gasped, her face pale, sweat beading on her brow. She tested her leg, winced, but forced herself upright, leaning on him. "The override's partial, if they sever it." Jax scanned the chamber, eyes landing on the fractured conduits overhead. Alien tech, vast and incomprehensible, but he'd seen patterns in the chaos, flows of energy like rivers under ice. "Not sever, redirect. Your scanner. Where is it?" She nodded toward the shadows, where it lay cracked but intact. He lunged for it as the first drone breached the door, a spindly thing with glowing vents firing pulses that scorched the walls. Jax rolled, scooped the device, and fired back with his sidearm, not to kill but to draw fire. The drone jerked, buying seconds. Elena dragged herself to the crystal's base, fingers flying over the exposed panel. "I'm amplifying the code weave. It'll spread faster, but it'll fry the local nodes. We lose the chamber." "Do it." Jax slid beside her, using the console as cover. More drones poured in, their whine building to a screech. He aimed the scanner like a makeshift grenade. It's cracked. Emitter pulsing with jury-rigged overload from the ship's auxiliary power. Human trick. Turning their own salvage against them. The blast erupted, not explosive, but a surge that shorted 3 drones mid-air, hulls crumpling in sparks. The chamber shuddered, lights dimming as Elena's command hit. The crystal whined, then bloomed with erratic light, the override cascading outward. Distant explosions echoed, sister ships in the fleet faltering, their war machine unraveling from the core. But the lead drone adapted, its form shifting, limbs extending toward them. Jax shoved Elena behind a pillar, taking the hit on his shoulder. Pain seared, but he twisted, slamming his knife into its joint. It spasmed, collapsing in a heap. Silence fell, broken only by their heaving breaths. The rumbles faded. The reinforcements, caught in the cascade, went dark. Elena slumped against him, her leg a throbbing ruin, but her eyes met his with that unbreakable spark. They'd paid in blood and bones that might never mend. But the stars shifted, human code now the pulse of the void. One generation's fire, and the machine broke.